We're going to start with demand-side policies, one of the two set of policies imposed by the government on the economy. The purpose of demand-side policies is to control the overall level of aggregate demand of the country. Demand policies are divided to two categories: fiscal and monetary policies.
Fiscal policy.
Let's talk about fiscal policies first. A fiscal policy is a government policy that is more direct than a monetary policy. A fiscal policy is recognized either by a change in the overall spending of the government or a change in the consumer affecting taxes. Government spending could be a variety of areas such as education, science and technology, healthcare, and infrastructure. Fiscal policies can be expansionary, which increases aggregate demand, or contractionary, which decreases aggregate demand. First, an expansionary fiscal policy aims to increase the aggregate demand of the economy. Expand equals more demand. Yeah, just call me Dr. Seuss. The government can either increase their spending budget or lower the income and purchasing taxes of the consumers. But why would the government want to lower taxes, you ask? Well, if the spending budget is increased, demand for stuff would also increase. You suddenly have enough money to buy that station wagon of your dreams. But your demand will require someone to go make that station wagon for you. As a result, the increase in AD, or aggregate demand, will cause an increase in employment. Similarly, increase in government spending will also allow jobs to be created. An example of this is the spending plan of Taiwanese government, shown in the following article. Since Taiwan is aiming to spend more money on public infrastructure, this will create more construction jobs. More employment means more spending. Therefore, the aggregate demand of the economy is increased. In a diagram, it can be seen that the policy causes the AD curve to shift to the right. Next is contractionary. I guess contractionary makes you wary? Anyways, basically a contractionary fiscal policy is simply the opposite of an expansionary fiscal policy, aiming to decrease the aggregate demand of the economy. To do this, the government can either reduce spending or increase the taxes imposed on the consumers. If the government spending or consumer spending budget is reduced, people will start to spend less, and aggregate demand is likely to fall as a result. An example of this can be shown in Brazil's future plan to reduce the budget on pensions, as it is becoming a major cost in the Brazilian government. As you can see, the reduction on pension will take jobs away from workers in the pension offices across Brazil. This reduces their spending power, therefore it decreases AD. In a diagram, the AD curve will shift to the left because of this policy. Furthermore, since pensions affect senior citizens, a lower pension will cripple their ability to spend. AD is further decreased. Now that we've had fiscal policies, let's move on to monetary policies. I don't know why they're called fiscal and monetary, but sorry, no rhymes for you here. You'll have to learn it the hard way.
Monetary policy.
Monetary policies affect the supply of money and the level of interest rates in an economy in order to influence the aggregate demand of an economy. When interest rates are used as a monetary policy, they are called base rates. The central bank is essentially the government's bank and the ultimate authority in control of money supply. Think of it as the overall casino house being able to control the payout of individual casino games. But just like fiscal, again, we have expansionary and contractionary monetary. And if you think they still have the same two purposes as before, you're on fire today, Sherlock. Expansionary monetary policy is aimed to increase aggregate demand through the increase of money supply. The government achieves this mainly through lowering the base rate. This influences people to spend more and save less, as money stored in the bank is making less profit for them, thus increasing consumption and aggregate demand. An example of this is shown in the following article. It states, the Reserve Bank of Australia, the RBA, cuts its key rate to 2.5 from 2.75%. The Reserve Bank of Australia has decided to do this because the demand for Australian goods from China has slowed over the years. In order to replace the lost demand, the Reserve Bank is aiming to increase consumption from within the country. As we know, after expansionary comes contractionary. Contractionary monetary policy is a macroeconomic policy utilized by the government with the goal of reducing aggregate demand through the reduction of the money supply. Why would the country want to do this? To slow down the inflation rate of the country. I'm sure you don't want to carry barrels of money just to buy a loaf of bread now, do you? Contractionary monetary policy can be carried out primarily through the increase of the country's central bank's base rate. The increased rate will logically cause people to want to save more money and borrow less from the bank, thus reducing aggregate demand. An example of this policy is how Brazil's central bank raised its benchmark interest rate by half a point to 10% in the following news article. It states that Brazil's central bank raised its benchmark interest rate on Wednesday by half a point to 10% as expected, and hinted it may be about to switch gears. giving continuity to the rate adjustment process as it tries to bring inflation down to the bank's target of 4.5%. As you can see, the goal, of course, is to bring down inflation by creating the incentive for people to save more. If shown on a diagram, the result of a contractionary monetary policy will result to the demand curve shifting to the left. Maybe now you're sick of all the demand-side fiscal and monetary mumbo-jumbo, which is why it is time to move on to supply-side policies. The overarching aim of supply-side policies is to increase the overall potential output of an economy by generating an increase in the quantity of the factors of production and/or improving the quality of the factors of production. Now that's quite a mouthful. Thanks, Max. So basically, policies affecting supply of products in an economy. Just like demand-side, supply-side policies are divided into two separate categories: interventionist supply-side policies and market-based supply-side policies.
Interventionist supply-side policies.
First of all, we will be looking at interventionist supply-side policies. As the name implies, these policies require the government to intervene in order for the economy to stimulate growth. Certain examples of interventionist supply-side policies are the investments in particular areas in order to improve the quality or quantity of labor or reduce the cost of production. Improving the quality or quantity of labor will increase the overall potential for the output of an economy, hence allowing for growth. Let's look at this article as an example. By investing in the agricultural sector with £160 million, farmers will be able to use that money for research and development in order to increase their work efficiency within their sector. This is done by targeting development in genetics, health in crops and livestock, sensors, and robotics. Developing these factors would lead to increased work efficiency and hence reduced cost of production. Therefore, the overall potential output of the nation's economy can then be increased as more products can be produced at the same price as before. The impact of this particular interventionist supply policy can be seen using the Keynesian macro diagram. Why is it called Keynesian? Because it was invented by John Keynes, but that's not important right now. Long-run aggregate supply shifts to the right as there is now spare capacity due to more work efficiency at the same price. As a result, the government can increase economic growth as the economy now has an increased output and capacity.
Market-based supply-side policies.
Next is market-based supply-side policies, also known as free market-based policies, as they allow the market to operate more freely, minimizing government intervention. Market-based policies create working incentives in order to increase work efficiency and production, as well as an increase in incentives for firms to invest and increase productivity. A little bit confused? Some examples of market-based supply-side policies are privatization, lowering minimum wages, deregulation, lowering income taxes, etc. The given policies are all examples of how government intervention would be reduced, whilst allowing lower costs of production. Basically, all the big corporations can spend less money on things like healthcare, minimum wages, to be able to improve production and increase supply. These policies, however, can negatively impact the lives of workers, as it kinda sucks being paid below minimum wage with no benefits. The following article will give us a closer look on this market-based policy. By privatizing Chinese companies, big important companies to China's economy will be privately owned, and this will be much more efficient than nationalized firms, therefore increasing the overall potential output of China's economy. Nationalized economies tend to be less efficient, and that is basically all you need to know about
government policies.
To recap, there are demand and supply-side policies. Demand-side policies are used to influence aggregate demand, and supply-side policies are used to influence aggregate supply. Demand-side policies includes fiscal policies, which can be expansionary or contractionary, and monetary policies, which can also be expansionary or contractionary. Supply-side, on the other hand, includes interventionist and market-based policies, which both aim to increase aggregate supply. Hope you've learned something today, and thanks for watching.